What is up, everybody? On today's video, I'm going to show you how I fixed my GTI and how I did it for under $200. All right, y'all. So in order to do this job, let me show you the stuff that I purchased. Some fine grit, wet dry sandpaper, rod bearings, 10 quarts of cheap oil, some high quality assembly lube, plastic gauge, a can of brake clean, and a can of WD-40. All of this stuff, including the rod bearings with shipping, all of this stuff cost me less than $200. All right, so a couple of things that I need to address first. Number one, we are just going to slap rod bearings in this engine. Now, before y'all start attacking me in the comments section, hear me out. I understand that the best process would obviously be to either remove this engine and refresh and thoroughly clean the bottom end, or to refresh and swap in a new bottom end. I understand that, and I'm not trying to deny that. However, I've consulted a number of friends and acquaintances who are really skilled mechanics and engine builders, and we all seem to be on the same page. So we need to clean the crank. There's a little teeny groove on the cylinder 1 journal that needs to be taken care of. So we're going to clean and polish it as best as we can. We're going to install 12 new rod bearings, 2 per cylinder. So new rod bearings in the entire engine. We bought some high quality rod bearings from Schimble Performance. And those of you who know VR6s know that Bill is the undisputed champion. He is the VR6 guy. So anything he sells is worth its weight in gold. And additionally, we're gonna flush the engine as good as we can once we get everything back together. We're gonna run some cheap oil in it, run some detergent in it, flush it as good as we can, and then we will put nice liquid moly oil in it and probably change the oil every 500 miles for 1,500 or 2,000 miles at least, with a fresh oil filter every time. The way I look at it is, I have some very big plans for this car. I have some big name sponsors who want a part of the action, and so I need to get this thing back running and driving. I have sourced an extra VR6 that I can set aside for now, and when time allows it and when the budget allows it, I can refresh or build the bottom end on that, and I'll swap my head onto that and put that engine in the car. Rod bearings are very inexpensive. They're $60 for a set of 12, and so there is a chance that I do this and it doesn't work right off the bat. There's a chance that I do this and it buys me a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, 3 years, who knows? And then it inevitably spins another bearing. Or there's a chance that this works and I just have an extra engine, for a rainy day. So it's a risk I'm willing to take, but the way I see it, the work when it breaks again, if it breaks again, is the same as the work now, which is refresh or replace the bottom end. So again, this is a risk I'm willing to take. I think it's worth the $60 in rod bearings. And if and when it fails again, we will have a new engine or a new bottom end ready to go in it. But I'm really eager to drive this thing. There's still time left in the year. Fall's going to be coming up, and I just want to drive it. I want to drive this thing in the mountains and enjoy myself in it. Let's get this thing cleaned up. We're going to do the shoelace method. Unfortunately for me, I play ice hockey and my skates need laces, so I already have an extra set. So I got an old skate lace that I cut in half because these things are like 9 miles long. We're going to cut our emery cloth to the width of the cylinder journal. We're going to wrap it around. We're going to wrap the shoelace around it, and we're going to do one of these, so that way the sandpaper is able to sand 360 degrees around the crank journal. I'm going to get set up and I'll kind of show y'all what I'm talking about. Here is our cylinder 1 crank journal, and as you can see, we got a slight groove on it. Just barely catch it with my fingernail. I'm going to start with 1000 grit. We might need to go grittier, but I feel like 1000 is a good starting point. And we're going to wrap this around the crank journal, and then we're going to wrap our shoelace around it. And as we pull on either end of the shoelace, it's going to twist this and sand on our crank journal. We're going to start off with some WD-40. Just soak this real good. I don't think you can use too much of it. Soak it real good. I'm going to do the same thing with our sandpaper. Just going to spray it directly on here. Now, I'm going to wrap this around. Reach up here and get it. It's my other finger. Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to take our shoelace, do the same thing, but we're going to wrap it around an additional time.
There's one.
Same thing, and wrap it around again.
See if I can reach up here, find the other end, my finger. It's gonna take patience. There we go.
Remember, this is the most important step. Okay, now that I got both ends and I can pull on them real tight, I'm gonna spray some more WD-40, just because I don't think it can hurt. Really make sure everything is lubricated well, and we're just going to go back and forth like this. See, as I'm pulling, I'm keeping good tension with both of my hands on either end, but as I'm pulling each end, it's twisting our sandpaper and hopefully cleaning up that bearing material and cleaning up that groove on the journal. So take as long as you need with this step. It can be as quick as maybe 20 or 30 minutes. You might need to spend several hours on it. I do recommend starting with a fine, the finest grit possible first. And if you need to work your way back to a more aggressive grit, based on what kind of progress you're making, then you can make those adjustments. But definitely take your time. This is not something that's going to happen in 5 minutes. And again, this is a critical step. We want this journal as clean as possible for our new rod bearings. So hopefully this does not happen again. So I will check back in with y'all once we make some progress, and I'll kind of show you where I'm at. It's feeling really smooth. Like, this feels like absolute butter. I can't believe this worked as well as it did. I also think we got super fortunate in that ridge was very minimal, and if anything, it was just excess bearing material. But very, very lucky indeed. Just goes to show that VR6s are the best. I think we might already be finished. I've been at this for about an hour. Very, very happy with everything. Let's take a look. Whoops. Wow, look at that. So there's our crank journal now. Smearing is just leftover residue from the brake clean. Look at that. I mean, this thing, woo, super smooth. And just for comparison, there's cylinder 4, which had very normal wear and tear on the bearings. So there's a nice clean journal from the factory, and there's the one that we just cleaned up. All right, so I'm really excited with how that came out, and I actually didn't even use any of these grits, 4, 6, or 800. I use 1000, 15, 2000, and 2500. That's what those strips are. So now we can move on to getting things cleaned up and installing our rod bearings. So these have been purchased from Schimmel Performance. He is the VR6 guy. So we have 12 brand new rod bearings. And starting with cylinder 1, I'm just going to replace these cylinder by cylinder. So that way, as I rotate the crank, everything else is still attached to it and everything moves with it how it's supposed to. But we will install these one by one, make sure everything's good. We're going to use this Permatex Ultra Slick assembly lube. This is pretty much the best assembly lube you can get based on what my friends have told me. And once we do all this, we'll get everything sealed back up, let it sit overnight, and then we'll do the break-in oil process. So let's get it. So first order of business is I want to continue to clean this. I have already gone through and pretty thoroughly cleaned it with brake clean and a rag, but I'm just going to give it another couple spritzes, and I actually have a coffee filter. I like these because they're lint-free, and just going to clean it up to the very best of my abilities. Spray her down. I want to get it on me, but oh well. I've got a microfiber on my chest where it's dripping. We're just going to take this, wipe it as as good as we can. You can see not a whole lot's coming off, so we've done a good job cleaning this. And yes, I'm not wearing gloves because I ran out, but also I really want to be able to feel. Oh, that brake clean burns. Damn. Oh, that burns. Here, let's hold a rag up this time. There we go. Way to use your head, Chobes. Oh, that burns. God. See our bearing up there. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try and pull it down. Yep, there we go. Now, we're going to take our bearing. I'm going to inspect it. Make sure it's free of debris. And these do have the tangs. So these only seat into the connecting rod one way. We're a little crooked. Try and pop it back out. There we go. Now it's going in. It really should not give you much resistance. If it does, you're probably crooked. There we go. Now, I'm going to push the rod back up. And I'm going to take our Permatex. I'm going to put a good squeeze on my finger. And we're going to lather this up real good. Make sure we get it all the way around. Very nice. Now we have our cap. Same thing. Nice liberal amount on there. You want this thing to be well lubricated for that first startup. Have that in. Pull our rod down. There we go. Once again, make sure the bearing is seated nicely. It is. Now we can take our cap. All right, we're going to look up that torque value and I'll be right back. All right, it is 40 plus 90 degrees, 40 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. All right, so here are our old rod bearings. So here's there's cylinder 1, the lower and the upper, obviously completely trashed. But here is 2 through 6. And while yes, there is some wear, what I'm very happy to see is that everything is even. As you can see, we have a little bit of wear on the top bearings, not as much or really not any wear on the bottom bearings, but again, it is evenly distributed. This whole scenario is likely due to oversight on my end. This engine definitely had evidence of some pretty severe oil leaks when I picked it up. I should have paid more attention when I went through and refurbished everything. There is a high likelihood that this is all from oil starvation from the previous owner, because I did everything by the book. I bought basically every new nut and bolt for the engine for the top end. I retimed it. I got everything cleaned and decked, etc., etc. I ran good engine oil in it. I changed the oil like every 1,500 miles. And so, checking over everything, and also due to the fact the car ran so well, I think this is likely oil starvation from the previous owner. So not trying to pass blame onto someone else. Again, this is a big oversight on my end, but we all live and learn. So anyway, when I went through and checked all of my tolerances with the plasti gauge, I ran out of room. And so all that footage has been lost. But I have gone through, checked all of our clearances and tolerances on the new rod bearings with plasti gauge, and everything checked out, as it should have. When I went in and cleaned that crank journal, I realized that the wear was not nearly as severe as I even thought it was, and we put in standard size bearings. So those will kind of self-clearance themselves once we begin the break-in process. But unfortunately, I need new O-rings for the oil crossover tube and for our oil pickup tube. These have likely never been removed ever from the engine, so these have 175,000 miles of heat cycling, and so they're pretty flat and brittle. So I had to order those. They're very cheap parts, however my dealer does not have them, so I had to order them online. They will not arrive until Saturday, and Saturday I leave for the beach. My wife and Oscar and I are going to go to the beach for a week for a much needed vacation. So this will get patched up Saturday before I leave, but unfortunately I will not be able to actually test the car and run the engine until after I get back. So this is going to be a two-parter. Very, very happy with the work that I was able to accomplish yesterday. We got the new rod bearings in. Everything rotates smoothly. But stay tuned. When I get back, we'll go through, flush the engine, break everything in, and then get some fresh motor oil in there and give it a drive and see how she does. I hate to leave y'all kind of open-ended, but such is life. I'm busy and I'm doing everything by myself. So I will catch y'all in a little over a week. Hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for some really, really exciting news on the Mark 6 that I hope to announce here shortly. Please consider subscribing if you haven't. Follow my Instagram accounts if you want to get the latest on the car. That is where I do the most updates. Stay tuned. Appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.